Hi, and welcome to Module 7, Lecture 11, Part 1, Video Examples of Multicultural Education and Gifted Education Practices. So here you're going to see some examples of how to integrate culturally responsive teaching and also multicultural education practices within the actual classroom environment where you could be serving gifted students. To get us started, just a really quick review. Remember last week we talked about the different approaches that you can integrate multicultural education practices into your inclusive settings, which includes contributions, additive transformation, and then social action. The videos that you'll see within this lecture do kind of an array, except they do not cover the approach of social action. That one was a little difficult to locate. But I think from the resource you can kind of ascertain the best approaches to how to best integrate culturally responsive and multicultural education practices. So really briefly, there are about 4 ways that you can ensure that you're integrating some type of culturally responsive approach in your teaching or integrating multicultural education practices. And they include integrating culturally responsive teaching approaches, and I have a resource for you with that, and also a demonstration video that breaks it down. And then actual multicultural teaching, which means that you're incorporating culturally responsive approaches as well as content exposure. And then you could do like a whole curriculum reform, which we covered under the chart, which is social action, which would take a little bit more effort in regards to you changing your curriculum approach and teaching styles to mirror cultures that would be relevant to your students. So this video is similar to others in that when we do the video reflections, where we look at the examples, there's a little bit of lecture, and then it's kind of wrapped up. So there's only about 7 slides with this. So this one will go really quickly. All right, so let's get started with the first example here, which is culturally responsive teaching example. So I like this video because it shows you exactly how to do culturally responsive teaching through an actual lesson. So let's take a look.
Culturally responsive teaching and learning goes beyond the classroom walls as well. The following portion of this video presents a short lesson example on how to use culturally responsive techniques while introducing a Making Meaning book. Techniques to look for are call and response, action thermometer, raise your righteous hand, think, pair, share, pick a stick, bottoms up, heads together, and musical round the room.
Everybody look at me! Everybody look at me! Alright guys, today for Making Meaning we're going to read a new book called Amelia's Road. And to introduce the book, we are going to do an action thermometer. There is a statement on the board. If you agree with the statement, you're going to move to the front of the room, and if you disagree with the statement, you're going to move to the back of the room. If you kind of don't know, you can be somewhere in the middle. Will somebody raise their righteous hand so that they can read the statement out loud? Sydney.
Moving homes from place to place would be lots of fun.
Great job. All right. Ready? Any questions? I like to move it! Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so now we're going to do a think, pair, share. First, you're going to think about why did you move to this part of the room? Why do you agree or disagree with this statement? And then you will pair with someone next to you and talk about why you moved there, and then we will share with the whole classroom. I will pick sticks, okay? Alright, so first, think,
Sometimes I don't like it because I have to move away from them. No, they would go to school and they won't know. So then they're gonna not know anybody.
Everybody give me 5.
Everybody give me 5.
Okay, that was very interesting listening to your conversations. I'd like to share those with the group. So if I'm going to pick a stick, and you are going to share what your partner said. All right? Hamel.
My partner said he won't like the neighborhood because it's like a lot of music and a lot of noise around. He just can't go to sleep because he gotta wake up for school. And that's why.
So he wants to move around?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Next stick. Carlos.
It won't be really great to go to a different school because if you really won't know anybody, then there'll be bullies and then they'll pick on you and then it make a horrible life for a year in school.
Okay, so you'd rather stay in the same place.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, one more stick. Alondra.
Well, my partner said that she'd rather stand in the middle because it would be a little fun going to another school and moving because you might meet new friends and you might meet new persons. But she said it might be a little sad because you might miss your old friends and you might get really embarrassed in other schools.
So, a little bit on both sides.
Yeah.
All right. Take a seat, take a seat.
Take a lot
All right, great job, guys. Great thoughts. It's a perfect way to introduce our book, Amelia's Road, which is about a little girl who has to move around a lot. But before we read the book, we are going to preview 5 vocabulary words with Round the Room, okay? So, the first word is grim.
Grim.
Second word is tidy.
Tidy.
Third word is occasion.
Occasion.
Fourth word is narrow.
Narrow.
And fifth word is twirl.
Twirl.
All right, so when we do Around the Room, you know you have to do bottoms up, heads together. You have to take turns writing and make sure you write in your group's box only. Okay, any questions?
Yeah.
All right, bottoms up, heads together.
Sports is like bad. The fish cannot fit because the bridge is too small. So what's in the spinner?
What was it again?
Faucet.
Already got this.
Oh. So the cool part about what you saw in that video included a plethora of activities that increase cooperative learning and also just different styles of introducing content, starting a book, culturally responsive approaches that are summarized in an article that I have here. So it says the students who come from a culture that is different that of their school may have negative educational experiences if they don't understand appropriate ways to respond in class, which, you know, it often leads to them being sent to the office, sent out. So here, the responding protocols that you saw within the video address this problem in a culturally responsive way. So here is the article. And I'll just walk you through some of what they state here, and that link is the article that you have. So here they explain what responding protocols are, what responding protocols have to do with culturally competent teaching. And it says here, when a student comes from a culture that does not match the culture of the school, unintentional cultural misunderstandings can occur. So that's the reason why culturally responsive teaching is effective. It decreases the misunderstandings. In this situation, a critical role of culturally competent teachers is to be sensitive and accepting of children from outside the majority culture and accepting of their differences. And that difference can mean like a student who likes to shout out, who needs to move around, who listens to music, who learns cooperatively. They're used to engaging with their friends and talking, and that's just the way that they learn. These methods decrease the misunderstandings in that. Then to help these students better understand behaviors that are expected at school and to help them be successful in the school culture, we as teachers need to clearly and explicitly teach all students how to respond in school depending upon the situation. So it mixes things to make sure that they learn a normative behavior for a traditional U.S. Americanized school culture environment, and they learn how to integrate their ways with some of the responses that they have. So you saw the parent response, explains the purpose, shout out. She didn't let them shout out. Here's a moment of silence. She had a little think thing that they did. My turn, your turn. Pick a stick. She did that. Roll them. She didn't do that one. Slates. Train or pass it on. Raise a righteous hand. I really like that one. This one is where students raise a hand. Fist to volunteer information that is specific to their own experiences. Remember, the key is that they volunteer. Hand raising should only be used in the context of volunteerism, in which only particular students, if any, can offer information based on their experiences or particular knowledge that is not necessarily expected of the group. Thumbs up, thumbs down, whip it around, and then there's some other resources for you. But these are pretty cool, so if you're interested in trying those out, feel free. Obviously, it took some training for the teacher to teach her students how to be responsive to those practices, so it will take a little bit of prep, but once it's in place, it seems like it's pretty effective. And I've seen it done a few times, and it can be effective. So watching this multicultural teaching, it shows how to do the version of contributions and additive approaches to increasing multicultural education within curriculum practices. And she does mention a little bit about gifted students programming at the end. So this one is a little long, so we'll just take a look.
Hi, this is a presentation on teaching through multicultural diversity. The importance of sharing who we are and where we come from through teaching middle school allows us as educators to use what is in our surroundings to enhance the lessons and bring the children of different cultures together as one. This is a very important aspect of middle school and high school children. They're at stages where they want to belong and understand and be understood. And I feel that in a classroom, this can be obtained and they can learn about one another in many ways. A teacher's goal is to provide the best education possible to every child in their classroom. It is important to be aware of the cultural differences that exist within the students in one's class. It is important to understand the child's home experiences and expectations in order to build an academic surrounding and expectation that the child can meet through contextualized instruction. This can be met. We as educators just need to make adjustments and changes in our styles and have to understand sometimes we have to have multiple styles in teaching children. Again, middle school and high school, the children have more to say. They're more responsive. They want to be a part of what's going on. There will be children in need of special services due to disabilities or learning challenges, and through multicultural lesson plans, everyone can join in and learn about each other. I've chosen to show how teaching one another where we come from can be done through a multiple subject lesson plan. This can be featured over a week or even a month's time. I begin with social studies, multicultural festivities that can be held in the class to cover the diversity of one's culture. Easily we can have various cultures within the classroom, some being of Spanish, Chinese, or West Indian descent, and the children can bring in dishes on these from their culture and share with the classroom some of the things they like the most, or some of the most unique things they believe come from their culture. Another area is history, sharing the facts of war to reveal that all cultures have had times of suffering. War is something that has happened in every single piece of land on this earth. We have the Chinese Opium War, Spanish-American War, and the West Indies, the fight to control the West Indies. These are wars that some children may have never learned about. They're not in the textbooks. But in researching and studying their own history, they can find it and then share it with the class through technology. Seeing how a daily necessity holds the same value but looks different through currency is another feature that can be used. For math, you share the differences in the money from one's country, having a sample money exchange in class, crossing the exchanges among cultures. The children can either bring in money from their country, or they can research online and bring in samples of what it looks like, what the money looks like. And as a group project, as a class assignment, they can get together and do money exchange, do research online, bringing in technology, and allow the children to find out what the money exchange amongst each other between cultures and countries and then the states would be. You can also hold a class trip to the New York Exchange. Very different ways you can incorporate. Finally, we have learning about one another through literature. Literacy, a review of sample poetry from different authors of different cultures and share the expressions used in one's language is one way of bringing in the poetry. You have Spain, you have Tobago, and you have from China. These different poets have written things small and large across the board, very different, but it can be merged together. And it can be given to the children, and they can read the translated into English versions, and they can share either similarities of what they've learned about literature and literacy, creative writing in their classrooms, share the differences, the similarities, try to create something off of one of these works. Again, these lessons can take place in one day, or take place over the course of a week or a month. Kind of domino affecting off of one another, continuing throughout the semester to help the children in the class gain knowledge on one another's culture and bringing them together. Here we have the poet from Spain that would be given to the children, and afterwards the translation would be given to the children so that they can compare the design and the style with other poems that they may have recently learned about. Very same thing with Tobago, no translation needed because it is in English already. And here we have poetry from China with the translation and the actual poem in Chinese literature, written text, so that the children can see the difference in the language alone and compare how it is in the English print and the Chinese print as a group. The sample lesson plan, first page I have here, is Trip Around the World. Lesson plan title, I have the concept, topic to teach, general goals, specific objectives, the required materials. step-by-step procedures, closure, assessment, and then we have the second page, which completes the lesson plan with adaptations for students with learning disabilities. You could easily take a child with auditory difficulties and have them receive an in-depth written explanation of what we'll be doing, what will be going on, and with assistance, they can participate. A child with behavioral disorders can have that additional guidance in the class during the activities so that they can participate appropriately. A child with learning disabilities or physical challenges can participate with guided assistance as well. They will be allowed to show their reactions, and the parents will be communicated to in order to have them send in and share the foods for the particular trip around the world event. You have extensions for gifted students so that they don't become easily bored or feel that this was a very simplified activity. They can be given the opportunity to advance their submitted lessons to areas not required by the teacher. They can join together and provide a collage of the submitted materials and introduce the class a joint project. They can feel that they're taking a special part in the project overall and enhancing it with their knowledge and their abilities. The possible connections to the subjects are math, social studies, literacy. Quite sure there's many more areas that can be connected. But overall, this particular lesson plan and these particular projects can be one-day lessons, week-long lessons, or monthly lessons that can bring the multicultural diversity of a middle school or high school classroom, bring the children together, get them to laugh and smile at one another, and teach one another. They're taking control of their own education, as well as sharing and becoming social with one another. This, I believe, is one way that we can minimize the diversity and the rejections within middle school and high school grade levels.
Okay, so that video kind of took you through some, I thought they were great ideas as far as some things I've never actually thought about with the money and currency. But all in all, that was typically a unit that you could teach to integrate or do the additive approach. Here is an example of math where he goes through different ways of integrating culture into content areas within math, and then this is our last one.
Hello. Today we are going to talk about how to incorporate multicultural education into a secondary math class. First, let us define what multicultural education is. The book Multicultural Education in a Pluralistic Society defines multicultural education as an educational strategy in which students' cultures are used to develop effective classroom instruction in school environments. It supports and extends the concepts of culture, diversity, equality, social justice, and democracy into the school setting. The reason why multicultural education is important is because it allows students to connect what they are learning to their own experiences and backgrounds. I wanted to talk about this subject because some people think that it is impossible or very challenging to have a multicultural education setting in a math class. While it may be difficult at times, it is something that can be done and is also a very important task. Many students may become discouraged when it comes to math and may just give up on it. If teachers are able to connect math to their lives, students will be more likely to have a positive attitude and would have the chance to be more successful in these classes. Another reason I want to talk about this is because whenever the topic of multicultural education is covered, the examples given usually are not applicable for secondary math classes. The majority of examples pertain to younger students, and the ones that can be used in high school usually are for history or for social studies classes. So I wanted to give examples of how to incorporate multicultural education into secondary math classes. The first example that teachers can discuss mathematicians from different races and different countries. A lot of time, people view math as Eurocentric, meaning a lot of mathematicians come from Europe. This could cause students from different backgrounds to feel disconnected and lose interest in math. That is why it is important to discuss mathematicians from different ethnic groups, nationalities, and genders. This will allow all students to see that mathematicians come from everywhere, and hopefully students will gain an interest in math. One example would be to discuss Benjamin Banneker, who was an African-American mathematician. He was a self-taught mathematician and created numerous mathematical puzzles. Students could try to solve some of the puzzles that he created after learning about him. It is also important to discuss some female mathematicians as well. Many girls are uninterested in math, and perhaps if they were to learn about a few female mathematicians, they would gain some interest. One example would be to talk about Emmy Noether, who is known for her contributions to abstract algebra and physics. She was also described by Albert Einstein as the most important woman in the history of mathematics. Learning about mathematicians from all around the world will show students that they can do anything and will hopefully encourage them to do their best in school. The next few examples show how we can use statistics to connect math to students' lives. This can be done several ways. Instead of just using random numbers, teachers can use examples that better relate to students' lives. One way is to use sports when discussing the mean, median, range, and so on. Many students play sports in high school or enjoy watching them. Teachers could tell students to research their favorite player in a certain sport and look at a certain stat. For example, students could look at their favorite baseball player and see how many home runs they have hit in their career. The class would then use these numbers to determine the mean, median, and so on. This can be done in any sport, such as goals scored in soccer or hockey, points scored in basketball, or touchdowns scored in football. This would keep the students more interested rather than looking at numbers that have no meaning. It also allows them to choose their favorite player, which should be someone from their home country or someone that shares their history. Another way to use statistics to connect the students' lives would be to show how we can use statistics to study social or cultural issues. Using statistics is a great way for students to examine cultural groups. Teachers could use statistics to show the different nationalities that they may have at the school. Another example would be to have the students fill out a survey on certain topics concerning race and ethnicity, problems teenagers have, future goals, and so on. The teacher would then show the national statistics on the same survey, and the students would be able to compare the results to their own survey. This will let them connect their own feelings and views to the students all around the country. The next example would be when discussing patterns and symmetry. Teachers could use patterns on clothing or items from around the world. Examples of this would be to look at items such as clothes, rugs, or any decorations from African tribes. The students could also be asked to bring in items that the whole class could observe. This activity would allow students to see the different clothes worn throughout the world, and would also give them a chance to show off some of their own cultural items from their homes. Another example would be to connect the math problems to the students' lives. This is sometimes easier said than done, but it can still be accomplished. One way this could be done would be to have the students draw a map of the neighborhood they are from. Using the map, students can rays and segments and their relationships between them, such as being parallel, perpendicular, and intersecting. They can also learn about different angles from the map. Another idea would be to use the students' families to learn about percentages, fractions, and decimals. Several questions could be examined, such as how many family members live in the same state, how many live in the same country, how many speak English as a first language, how many different languages are spoken in the family, and so on. The students would then use math to observe the results and could compare them with the rest of the class. These are just a few ideas of how we can connect math to student lives, and there are many more. Teachers just need to be creative and have a solid relationship with their students. One project that could be used in a geometry class would be for students to create a shed or building of some sort. The students would use math to create the building, and another part of the project would be for students to add furniture, decorations, and whatever else they want in the shed. They would have a budget that they would have to stay under, adding more math to the project. This would give students a chance to add items from their own cultures to show where they come from. The students would share their projects, which would allow other students to see the different backgrounds of their peers. The last example we are going to look at is how math is connected to some famous buildings throughout the world. This will show students that math can be seen everywhere throughout the world. Starting from left to right on the first row, we have the Great Pyramid of Giza, in Egypt. There is plenty of math behind it, such as it being connected to pi and the Pythagorean theorem. The next picture is of the Taj Mahal in India. This building is a great example of line symmetry. If there's a line right down the middle of the building, you can see both sides are exactly the same. The next picture is of the Eden Project, which is a greenhouse in the United Kingdom. You can see from the picture that there are several shapes used in this building. There are geodesic domes, which have hexagonal and pentagonal cells. The Fibonacci sequence, which is a sequence in which every number is the sum of the previous two, is demonstrated throughout the inside of the building as well. Next, we have the picture of the Chichen Itza, located in Mexico. This was built by the Mayan civilization, who were known for being great mathematicians. There are plenty of interesting facts about this building, such as there are 365 steps, one for each day of the year. The next picture is of the Sagrada Familia in Spain. There's a lot of math behind the building, including a lot of geometric forms, such as hyperboloids and paraboloids. We then have a picture of the Parthenon, which is located in Greece. There are plenty of ratios that can be seen in this building, such as the horizontal and vertical proportions and the spacing between the columns. The golden ratio, which is a special number that is approximately 1.618, is believed to be used throughout the structure. Lastly, we have a teepee, and we can see the shape of a teepee is similar to a cone, so we can examine the dimension of different shapes through buildings. So those are some examples of how we can connect math to buildings all over the world. A project that a teacher could assign would be for teachers to find an interesting building from their country of choice and research the different math involved with the building. The students could then share their findings with the rest of the class, and all the students would be able to gain information on different buildings throughout the world. So hopefully, you gained some ideas on how multicultural education can be incorporated into secondary math classes. Thank you.
Okay, so that one was a little long, but I think the ideas are kind of cool because they can be cross-content. Sorry about the pause of the video. Final thoughts: embedding multicultural education and culturally responsive approaches, or with culturally responsive approaches to teaching practices can enhance the overall educational experience of students, especially those in gifted education programs that may lack opportunities for diverse cultural exchanges. Okay, we'll go into the next lecture.